Welcome to another programming exam solution tutorial for the AQA Computer Science 2016 Paper 1 exam. This is obviously on Warships, and this is possibly the last one I'm going to do on saving the board. And we're going to look at a vector notation. So hopefully you've seen the rest of the playlist, and you've seen my other save board. And for this one, I'm basically getting you to have a little bit of a practice at just concatenating a string, a little bit like the FEN from last year's Capture the Siren. If you haven't already seen it, then on the playlist comments I've got a Google Docs which sort of specs out this problem in a little bit more detail. So rather than me explaining it in detail here, have a look at the doc and you'll be able to see some of the hints and tips before we go over it. Well, let's have a look at the solution for this. The basic gist, what we're trying to create is, rather than having a literal text array dump of the characters in the array, we want to create a string that has the ship position in what's effectively a vector notation. So the ship initial, its location, whether it's horizontal or whether it's vertical, followed by the hit locations. I'll be honest with you, this is not perfect. I can't quite work out a perfect way of doing this. But I'll leave it for you to try and work out why it's not perfect. It's pretty darn good, but it's not perfect. So, we need to work out the ship's initial, that's easy. We need to work out the location, that's easy. And we need to work out whether it's horizontal or vertical. Well, that's a bit trickier. So what we're going to do, we're going to loop through the board. When we come to the ship only for the first time, we're going to record its initial. We're also going to record its location. Job done. We're then going to store that initial in a separate array. That way we know if it's the first time we've come to the ship, because we'll be able to check the array. Now this horizontal and vertical bit, we've got to be really careful. The basic gist of what I'm going to do is, let's say we came to this B here. If there is a B in the adjacent element, then it must be horizontal. If, let's say, for this D we come here and there isn't one there, it must be vertical. We're going to apply that logic. The only problem is that if I come to this S, let's say for instance here, and I check it, I mean I wouldn't check this one, it's not the first one, and I go to check the 10th element, or element 10, then of course the program will crash, because I'll have an out of range exception. So I need to make sure I'm only going to perform that check if there is, if we're not in this end column. If I'm in this end column and I'm seeing a ship for the first time, it must be vertical. Okay, hopefully all that logic makes sense. The last little bit we're going to do is these numbers here just represent the hits and misses. And we're just going to whack those into a second string and chuck them together at the end. Because obviously it's pretty easy just to say if it's a hit or a miss, then just record the location. We don't need to record the fact there's a hit or a miss. We know we could be able to string this together at the end. Right, I'm not going to build the code in front of you. Instead, I'm going to talk you through the code. By the way, this code is available at my paste bin. Just follow the link and you'll be able to get it. Okay, great wodge of variables being created, and as soon as I look at this I kind of think this is probably more complex than is realistic for this exam, but I've suggested it, so I better go through with it. Crucially, we've got the game string, which is the final sort of overall sort of string that we're going to write to the screen, to the file. We've got the array that's recording which ships have been seen. We need to index that, and I've got the shot locations, which is going to house all the locations for the hits and misses. Right. As you can see, we've got the classic nested loop to go through the array. Job done. I have then structured an if statement, and I've used my little new line continuation character, an underscore, just to make it a little bit more obvious to spot how my logic's working. So if it's not a dash and the ship isn't in the ship scene and it's not a hit or a miss, then I actually want to start, then it must be a new ship basically. If it's none of those, then it's a new ship. So I now need to take the ship initial, which is being housed in the element that we're currently inspecting, and I need to put the location. Hopefully that makes sense. I then need to quickly add that ship initial to the ship's scene array. There are other ways of doing this. I probably didn't need to do the index. I could have just appended it to the bottom of the array, but whatever. I've got a pointer. I like working with pointers. I've got an array, and I'm going to put it on there. So now this ship scene will be basically building up as I see each of the ships. Okay. So I've now got the ship's initial, and I've got the location. We now need to work out if it's horizontal or vertical. So if column is less than 9, we're going to do the little check the next column to see if it's horizontal. If it's 9, that will run this. I'm going to assume it's vertical. So if the two adjacent elements are the same, it's horizontal. If they're not, it's vertical. Or if it's in column 9, it's vertical. And there's about a dozen other ways you could structure that logic, but that's how I did it. Now then, back up to this level. If we've gone through and it's not a new ship, if it's a hit or a miss, then let's just record the location to a new string. Oh, by the way, have you spotted I've put little spaces after the horizontal and vertical, and I'm also going to whack a space after the location here, just so that the string on the screen is slightly more nicely presented. There's no other reason. Okay, so we've now got a string of shot locations, a string of ship locations with horizontal and vertical, whack them together, and to be honest with you, I'm just going to write it to the screen, and I'm also writing it to a file as well. Right, let's see what it looks like. Start new game, so what you want to do, and we'll go 1, 1, bonk. So, as you can see, I've got the sub, the battleship, destroyer, aircraft carrier, and the patrol boat, and I've got my shot. Same. Doesn't matter if it's a hit or a miss, still records it the same there. And you possibly have worked out why the system that I'm using isn't quite perfect. It wouldn't actually allow you to completely, it would allow you to reconstruct the board at that point, but you wouldn't know exactly what's gone on. Okay, that's quite involved. I would say it's a useful thing for you to look at. Oh, do you know what? I completely forgot to tell you where to call this from, didn't I? Sorry, I'd added it in here because I wasn't stepping through it, I forgot. I'm just doing that at the end of every single move, so I've just called it from make player move. Terribly sorry. That's quite involved. I reckon if you've practiced lots and lots and lots of other scenarios many times and you want a little challenge, I think this is quite a useful one for you to play with. Partly because I suspect there will be a problem which means that you have to sort of think about not having an out of range exception for an array, just because I quite like this adjacency idea. I've got a feeling there might be an idea of, another classic problem that would involve very similar logic would be you're not allowed to have two ships placed next to each other. That would be an interesting one to play with. Okay, do you know what? I think I am going to do a final thoughts video, just with, if you practiced everything else to death, a few other things to play with. Hope you found that video useful. If you've got any questions, please add comments. As you've seen, I do try and answer them. Obviously there's only a couple of days left, and all the best for the exam.